Hello, this is Joe Yuhan here in part 2 on our Achilles pain series and how the stride affects it. In part 1, we talked about the 3 things that stress the Achilles: the overstriding on a forefoot, the excessive lateral striking, and then the deflating. And so our strategies then are how to combat those 3. And so for number 1, the overstriding, the biggest thing is the posture and position. We want to be in a neutral posture. We want to be in a hip hinge because that is going to do the vast majority of the work for us to ensure not only that we have a nice push off behind, but that when we land, that foot lands underneath our body. Avoiding of overstride stress is so crucial in that regard. So being in the correct position puts that foot underneath. We're far less likely to overload that calf and Achilles if we are in the correct position. However, sometimes, even when we're in this good position, runners have a tendency to overreach. And so there's a couple different things you can think about to prevent that. And so another factor in, even if you have good hip hinge alignment, some runners just don't lift their leg enough. And so they may be here, but because they swing so low, they're still overstriding. So strategy number 1, the easiest, is to enhance hip flexion to get your stride more compact up and down. And I like to use the analogy of running through 4 inches of snow, because if you don't lift your leg, you're kind of plowing that snow and you can still overstride. However, if you get a little bit extra flexion and lift through the snow, you're more likely to then land underneath your body. So that is the overstride strategy. Posture and some leg strategies to make sure you land underneath. Number 2 involves that frontal plane loading. And simply put, a lot of runners, for various reasons, will get into this habit of lateral loading. The primary focus is simply to get on the medial arch. And that means to actively make an effort to get on that ball of the foot and big toe at some point in the stride. It doesn't mean that you're landing like this, but it's getting there, making the effort to get onto the medial arch, ball of the foot and big toe, and to use that part of your foot to push off. Doing so is going to dramatically reduce the magnitude of that excessive lateral strike and then that frontal plane lateral and medial stresses to the Achilles. So if you think that's you, one clue might be excessive loading or wear on the outside of the foot, and generally you may feel a lot of stiffness or have a high arch foot. And so in next month's piece, we're going to talk about some specific manual strategies to improve foot mobility. But for now, just get out there and start to work on landing and engaging the ball of the foot and big toe. So lastly, number 3 is how to avoid deflating. So again, deflating is this idea of, instead of landing and keeping the leg tall as we pass over it, we are landing and sinking down. And these runners look like this. They tend to be upright, but not always. But rather than be relatively tall, they are deflated down. And that deflated position with every stride puts excessive landing stresses or overstretch stresses into the Achilles and the calf. And so, strategies for this, it's a little more challenging and it often requires a little more strength. But number 1 that I like, besides being in a hip hinge position, is the paw back mechanism. And paw back is the idea that you're coming through and you're actively thinking about pulling the leg underneath. Doing so creates a rotary force so that when you land, rather than jamming into the ground and having to push, the hip creates a rotary force where you are just like a bike wheel spinning over that tall leg. going to be much easier to keep that leg tall, spinning and pulling through, than if you are banging into the ground and now you have to push. So paw back is a really nice strategy for that. That said, it can be a challenging one, and one of the things that can simply maintain the relative tall in the ankle and the knee is to think about pushing through the foot. Runners, especially trail runners, have a habit of disusing the foot, and they kind of just plod on it without pushing. And you can see the moment that I push through my ankle, I'm straightening both the ankle and the knee. So having a little bit extra mindfulness of, okay, I've landed on the ground, I'm just gonna push and really engage the ball of foot and big toe, keeps it on board during stance and keeps that leg long and tall. So those are your strategies to enhance running efficiency and prevent Achilles stress. Good luck.